Now let's begin. Lucas Bowers sat in the corner booth of a small diner outside Fort Worth, staring at the untouched coffee in front of him. The steam had long since stopped rising. Through the grease-stained window, he watched 18-wheelers roll past on the highway, their engines growling in the Texas heat. He'd been on the road for 3 days, installing communication systems for oil rigs scattered across the Permian Basin. The work was steady, paid well, and kept him away from the wreckage of his marriage. 6 months ago, Marion had asked for space. Not a divorce, just space. Lucas had moved into a modest apartment across town, seeing his 6-year-old daughter Emma every other weekend and Wednesday nights. The arrangement felt temporary, like a Band-Aid on a wound that needed stitches. Marion claimed she needed time to figure out what she wanted. Lucas suspected she already knew. They'd met 10 years ago at a VA hospital fundraiser. Lucas had recently left the Army after 8 years in signals intelligence, analyzing enemy communications and running counterintelligence operations in places the government still wouldn't officially acknowledge. Marion was volunteering, her blonde hair pulled back, her smile genuine and warm. She laughed at his stories, didn't press about the classified parts, and seemed to understand the weight he carried without making him explain it. Her father, Ryan Townsend, owned 3 car dealerships in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Ryan was the kind of man who measured success in square footage and spoke in sales pitches even at family dinners. He'd never served, never understood why Lucas chose the Army over college, and made it clear from the beginning that his daughter could have done better. Marion had brushed off her father's criticisms at first, defending Lucas with the same warmth that had drawn him to her. But somewhere between Emma's birth and the present, Marion had started hearing her father's voice more clearly than her husband's. Lucas's phone buzzed against the table. Casey Gould. The babysitter was supposed to be watching Emma tonight, while Marion attended some charity event with her father. Lucas frowned. Casey rarely called unless there was a problem. Hey Casey, everything okay? Her voice came through broken and trembling. Mr. Bowers, I just got here. You need to see what they're doing. Lucas's chest tightened. What do you mean? What's happening? I'm sending you a video. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. The call ended. Lucas stared at his phone, his pulse suddenly loud in his ears. The video file came through, 23 seconds long. His finger hovered over the play button for a moment before he pressed it. The camera was shaky, held low like Casey was trying to be discreet. The angle showed Marion's childhood home, the spacious living room Lucas had sat in countless times during holidays. But the furniture had been pushed aside. In the center of the hardwood floor sat a large dog crate, the kind meant for a German Shepherd or Rottweiler. Inside, curled in a ball, was Emma. She was crying, her small hands gripping the metal bars. Her princess pajamas, the ones Lucas had bought her last month, were dirty. Ryan Townsend stood over the crate, his expensive suit jacket removed, sleeves rolled up. He was attaching a padlock to the door. You'll stay here until you call him Dad. Ryan's voice came through clearly. Your mother and I have been patient enough. I want my daddy. Emma sobbed. Please, Grandpa, please. Marion walked into frame, carrying another padlock. She knelt beside the crate, her face cold in a way Lucas had never seen before. Make sure she can't get out this time, Daddy. The video ended. Lucas sat frozen, the phone still in his hand. This time. She'd said this time. He played the video again, forcing himself to focus past the rage building in his chest. There, on the inside of the crate door, barely visible in the video but unmistakable once he saw them. Scratch marks. Small, desperate scratch marks that could only have come from a child's fingernails. His daughter had been in that cage before. The coffee cup shattered in his grip. Hot liquid splashed across the table, but Lucas barely noticed. The other patrons turned to look, but he was already moving, throwing bills on the table and heading for the door. His truck was parked outside, still covered in road dust. 500 miles separated him from his daughter. 500 miles of highway that suddenly felt infinite. He called Casey back as he climbed into the driver's seat. Where are you now? I'm in my car outside the house. Her voice was steadier now, angry. They saw me film it. Mr. Townsend came at me, told me to delete it and get out. I ran. Mr. Bowers, this isn't the first time. Emma told me last week that she had to sleep in the bad box when she was naughty. I thought she meant time out. I didn't know she meant. You did the right thing, Casey. Don't delete that video. Send it to your email, your cloud storage, everywhere. Make copies. Already done. Good. I'm calling the police right now. Stay where you are until they arrive. Do not leave Emma alone in that house. I won't. I promise. Lucas ended the call and immediately dialed 911, giving the dispatcher Marion's address, explaining what he'd witnessed in the video, demanding immediate police response for child endangerment. The dispatcher tried to keep him on the line, but Lucas hung up. The police would handle the immediate situation. But this, what Marion and Ryan had done to his daughter, what they'd apparently been doing for God knows how long. This required more than just a police report. Lucas scrolled through his contacts, past names he hadn't called in years, until he found the one he needed. Gregory Harrison. They'd served together in Germany, running operations that officially never existed. After the army, Gregory had gone to law school, then into politics, working his way up to district attorney in a neighboring county. They'd kept in touch sporadically, Christmas cards, and occasional beers when both were in town. Gregory answered on the second ring. Lucas Bowers. It's been a minute. I need your help, Greg. It's about my daughter. The easy tone vanished from Gregory's voice. Talk to me. Lucas sent him the video while he drove, speeding through the darkening Texas landscape. He explained the separation, Ryan's influence over Marion, the custody arrangement that had Emma spending increasing amounts of time with her mother and grandfather. Gregory listened without interrupting, and Lucas could hear him watching the video, the silence on the other end speaking volumes. Jesus Christ, Luke, Gregory finally said. You called the police? First call I made. Good. They'll remove her from the home tonight. But you need to understand, Ryan Townsend has money and connections. This is going to get ugly. Let it get ugly. I'm not saying back down. I'm saying be smart. Everything by the book from here on out. Document everything, keep copies of everything, and let me make some calls. I know a family court judge who won't let money buy influence. But I need you to promise me something. What? Whatever you're thinking about doing to Ryan Townsend, and I know you're thinking about it, don't. Not yet. Give me 2 hours to put the legal framework in place. 2 hours for the system to do its job. If it doesn't. Gregory paused. Then we'll talk about other options. Lucas's hands tightened on the steering wheel. 2 hours. Emma had been in a cage for God knows how long, and Gregory wanted him to wait 2 hours. But Gregory was right. Going in hot, letting rage drive his decisions, that would only hurt Emma in the long run. Ryan would use it against him, paint him as unstable and dangerous. Marion's lawyers would have a field day. No, this required precision. Strategy. The same cold calculation he'd used in the army when planning operations. 2 hours, Lucas agreed. But Greg, make those calls count. Already dialing. And Luke? I saw those scratch marks in the video. We're going to bury them. The next 2 hours were the longest of Lucas's life. He drove through the night, the truck's engine screaming as he pushed 80 miles per hour. Gregory called back after 40 minutes to confirm that police had arrived at the Townsend residence, that Emma had been removed from the home and taken to a hospital for evaluation. Protective custody, pending emergency hearing. Marion and Ryan were being questioned separately. Casey called to tell him she'd given her statement and the original video to the responding officers. She was crying again, apologizing for not seeing the signs sooner. Lucas assured her she'd saved his daughter's life and promised to cover any legal expenses if the Townsends came after her. His phone lit up with a call from Marion. He let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message. Her voice was different now. Panicked, desperate, nothing like the cold woman in the video. Lucas, there's been a huge misunderstanding. The police took Emma. They're saying terrible things. Daddy's lawyer is here, but we need to talk. Please call me back. This is all blown out of proportion. We were just trying to discipline her, and you know how dramatic Emma can be. He deleted the message halfway through. Lucas arrived at the hospital just after midnight. Gregory was waiting in the lobby, his suit rumpled from a long day. They shook hands, and Lucas saw something in his old friend's eyes, a cold anger that matched his own. She's asleep, Gregory said. Doctor examined her. Found bruising on her arms consistent with being restrained. Scratches on her hands from the cage. Malnutrition. She's dropped 6 pounds since her last checkup 2 months ago. The pediatrician put it together. Your daughter's been telling them she gets locked up when she's bad. She thought it was normal. Lucas felt something crack inside his chest. Where is she? Room 312. CPS worker is with her, woman named Roberta Donnelly. She's good people, Luke. She's already filed for emergency custody to be granted to you pending full investigation. Judge signed off an hour ago. They took the elevator in silence. The hallway was quiet. Only the soft beeping of monitors and the shuffle of night shift nurses. Room 312 had a small window in the door. Through it, Lucas could see Emma sleeping in the hospital bed, so small under the white sheets. A woman in her 50s sat in the chair beside her, reading a case file. Gregory knocked softly, and Roberta looked up. She stepped out into the hallway, closing the door gently behind her. "Mr. Bowers," she said, extending her hand. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. How is she? Physically, she'll recover. Emotionally?" Roberta glanced back at the room. "We'll need to get her into counseling. The things she's told me about what's been happening in that house. It's systematic abuse, Mr. Bowers. Psychological torture. Your wife and her father have been trying to erase you from your daughter's life. Forcing her to call Marion's boyfriend Dad, punishing her when she asks about you, isolating her from anything that reminds her of you." "Boyfriend?" Lucas looked at Gregory. His friend nodded grimly. "Marshall Moreno. Owns a chain of luxury gyms. Met Marion at one of her father's charity events 3 months ago. According to the officer who took Marion's statement, she and Moreno have been planning to get married. They wanted Emma to accept him as her new father before filing for divorce and full custody. The pieces fell into place. Marion's requests for space, her father's increasing involvement in Emma's life, the way custody had slowly shifted until Lucas barely saw his daughter. This hadn't been a separation. It had been a calculated plan to replace him. "Can I see her?" Lucas asked. Roberta nodded. "Just don't wake her. She needs rest." Lucas entered the room alone. Up close, Emma looked even smaller. There was a bruise on her forearm, purple against her pale skin. Her blonde hair, Marion's hair, was tangled and unwashed. Her face, even in sleep, held traces of fear. He pulled the chair closer and sat down, careful not to make noise. This was his daughter. The little girl who used to climb into his lap during thunderstorms, who made him tea parties with her stuffed animals, who told him she wanted to be a soldier like Daddy when she grew up. Marion and Ryan had tried to break her, to reshape her into someone who would forget her own father. They had failed. Emma had endured. She hadn't given in. Lucas gently touched her hand, and Emma's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she looked confused, then frightened. Then she saw his face. "Daddy, hey sweetheart. I'm here." Emma burst into tears, reaching for him with desperate arms. Lucas gathered her up, holding her close while she sobbed into his shoulder. She was so light, too light. He could feel her ribs. "I didn't call him Dad," she hiccuped. "I told them no. I wanted you. But they said you didn't want me anymore, that you left because I was bad. Emma, look at me." Lucas pulled back enough to see her face. "I never left you. I never stopped wanting you. And you are not bad. You are perfect. Do you understand? Perfect." Grandpa said. "Grandpa was wrong. Everything he told you was a lie. I love you more than anything in this world. Nothing will ever change that." Emma clung to him, and Lucas felt her small body gradually relax as the terror drained away. Roberta stood in the doorway, giving them privacy, but Lucas could see her wiping her eyes. By 3 in the morning, Emma had fallen back asleep in Lucas's arms. Roberta had arranged for him to stay in the room, and Gregory had headed home to prepare for the emergency custody hearing scheduled for later that morning. Lucas sat in the chair, watching Emma breathe, thinking about everything Gregory had told him. Marion and Ryan had been released after questioning. No immediate charges. The district attorney's office was building a case, but these things took time. Ryan's lawyer, some expensive shark from Dallas, was already spinning the story. Discipline gone too far. Misunderstanding. The stress of the separation. Character witnesses lined up to talk about what a devoted grandfather Ryan was, what a loving mother Marion had always been. Marshall Moreno had been at the house when police arrived. He'd claimed ignorance, said he had no idea about the cage, that he'd only been there for dinner. The police had no evidence to contradict him. Lucas knew how this would play out. Ryan would throw money at the problem. High-powered lawyers, expert witnesses, private investigators to dig up dirt on Lucas's past. They'd paint him as an unstable veteran, unemployed, living in a cheap apartment, questioning his ability to care for a child. Marion would cry on the stand, talk about postpartum depression and her father's overbearing influence. They'd minimize, justify, and deflect. The system would grind slowly forward, and in 6 months, maybe a year, there might be consequences. Probation, supervised visitation, therapy requirements. Nothing that would truly make them pay for what they'd done to Emma. Unless Lucas made sure they paid. His phone buzzed with a text from Gregory. Hearing at 10 a.m. Judge Clarence House. He's fair but thorough. Bring documentation of everything. Also, found something interesting about Ryan Townsend. Call me in the morning. Lucas looked down at Emma, sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. She deserved better than watching her father play nice while her abusers walked free. She deserved justice. He thought about his years in Army intelligence, the operations he'd run, the enemies he'd helped dismantle. There was a particular satisfaction in watching someone destroy themselves with their own weapons, in turning their strengths into fatal weaknesses. Ryan Townsend was a predator who used money and influence to hurt people. Marshall Moreno was a narcissist who craved status and admiration. Marion was a coward who followed whoever held power. They tried to break Emma. Now Lucas would break them. But first, the custody hearing. Everything by the book, just as Gregory had advised. Let the system do its job, establish his rights, protect his daughter legally. Then, once Emma was safe, he'd show Ryan Townsend what happened when you put a 6-year-old girl in a cage. The nurse came in at dawn to check Emma's vitals. She woke up gradually, confused by the hospital room until she saw Lucas still sitting beside her. She reached for his hand, and he held it while the nurse worked, reassuring her that everything was okay. Am I in trouble? Emma asked in a small voice. No, baby. You're not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. Grandpa said if I told anyone about the bad box, something terrible would happen. Lucas felt rage surge through him again, but he kept his voice calm. Grandpa was wrong. You're safe now. You're going to stay with me, and nobody is going to hurt you anymore. Promise. I promise. The custody hearing was exactly what Gregory had predicted, thorough and fair. Judge Clarence House was in his 60s, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see through every word spoken in his courtroom. He'd reviewed the video evidence, read the police reports and hospital evaluations, and listened to testimony from Casey Gould, Roberta Donnelly, and the responding officers. Ryan's lawyer tried to spin it as a one-time incident, stressed that Ryan had no prior CPS involvement and a spotless record in the community. Marion testified that she'd been under tremendous stress, that she never meant to hurt Emma, that the cage had only been used twice as a last resort when timeouts weren't working. Judge House listened impassively, then asked to speak to Emma privately in his chambers. She came out 20 minutes later holding the bailiff's hand, and Judge House returned to the bench with an expression that made Ryan's lawyer shut up mid-sentence. Emergency custody is granted to Lucas Bowers, effective immediately, Judge House said. Marion Townsend will have supervised visitation only, pending completion of psychiatric evaluation and parenting classes. Ryan Townsend is prohibited from any contact with the minor child. This court is also referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation. We're adjourned. Ryan stood up, his face red. This is ridiculous. That girl is being coached. This whole thing is a vendetta by a bitter ex. Mr. Townsend, Judge House interrupted, his voice sharp as a blade. You are one word away from being held in contempt. I suggest you sit down and consult with your attorney. Ryan sat, but his eyes found Lucas across the courtroom. The look promised war. Lucas met his gaze steadily, then turned to where Emma sat with Roberta. His daughter waved at him, smiling for the first time in days. Outside the courthouse, Gregory pulled Lucas aside. You won. Emma's safe. That's what matters. It matters, Lucas agreed. But it's not enough. I figured you'd say that. Which is why I did some digging on Ryan Townsend. Gregory pulled out his phone, showing Lucas a series of financial documents. Ryan's dealerships are doing well, but he's leveraged to the hilt. 3 mortgages, business loans, lines of credit. He's cash poor and asset rich, which means he needs constant revenue flow to keep everything afloat. Meaning his empire is fragile. One major disruption, a lawsuit, bad publicity, loss of credit, and the whole thing could collapse. I also found something else interesting. Marshall Moreno? His gyms have a reputation. Specifically, there are rumors about how he treats female employees. Nothing proven, but enough smoke to suggest fire. Lucas looked at his friend. You're giving me ammunition. I'm giving you information. What you do with it is your business. But Luke, be careful. These people have resources. If you go after them, make sure you don't leave yourself exposed. I won't. Gregory hesitated. Whatever you're planning, I don't want to know the details. Plausible deniability. But if you need legal backup, if they come after you, I'm here. They shook hands, and Lucas watched Gregory walk back to his car. Then he looked up at the courthouse, where somewhere inside, Ryan Townsend was realizing his carefully constructed plan had failed. The war was just beginning. Emma moved into Lucas's apartment that afternoon. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, nothing like the spacious house she'd grown up in. But to Emma, it was paradise. She had her own room, her own bed, and most importantly, no cages. Lucas spent the next week establishing routines. School drop-offs and pickups. Therapy sessions with a child psychologist named Dr. Liz Lacey, who specialized in trauma. Cooking meals together, reading stories before bed, teaching Emma that she was allowed to be a kid again. Slowly, the fear in her eyes began to fade. But while Lucas rebuilt his daughter's life, he was also building something else. He started with Marshall Moreno. Lucas knew the type. Arrogant, convinced of his own charm, careless about covering his tracks because he'd never faced real consequences. These men always left trails. Lucas contacted Casey Gould again. She'd quit babysitting after the incident, shaken by what she'd witnessed, but she was eager to help when Lucas explained what he needed. Casey had friends who worked at Moreno's gyms, young women who did front desk work, personal training, cleaning crew. Lucas asked her to listen, to gather stories, to collect evidence of the rumors Gregory had mentioned. What Casey found exceeded expectations. Marshall Moreno was a predator who used his position to pursue female employees, making unwanted advances, offering promotions in exchange for dates, creating hostile work environments for anyone who rejected him. 2 women had filed complaints with HR that were never investigated. Another had been fired after spurning his attention. The pattern was clear, documented in emails and text messages the women had saved, but never shown to anyone because they feared retaliation. Lucas met with 3 of them personally, Hannah Nash, Christy Weaver, and Jennifer Wiley. All 3 were hesitant at first, but when he explained that Moreno was involved with the woman who'd abused his daughter, something shifted. They agreed to go public if Lucas could guarantee protection from legal retaliation. That's where Gregory came in. He connected Lucas with an employment attorney named Darla Edwards, who specialized in workplace harassment cases. Darla reviewed the evidence and smiled grimly. We can destroy him. Multiple plaintiffs, documented pattern of behavior, corporate negligence. We file a class action lawsuit and go public at the same time. The gyms will drop him to save face, and his reputation will be radioactive. How long? Lucas asked. 2 weeks to prepare. Then we light the fuse. While that timer counted down, Lucas turned his attention to Ryan Townsend. This required more finesse. Ryan had money and lawyers, but more than that, he had pride. His dealerships, his charity work, his standing in the community, these things defined him. He'd built an empire, and he measured his worth by the respect and fear it commanded. Lucas spent 3 days following Ryan, learning his patterns. The old man was predictable, arrived at his flagship dealership at 8 every morning, took lunch at the same steakhouse every Tuesday and Thursday, attended charity events with carefully staged photo opportunities. He was always performing, always selling, always maintaining the image of Ryan Townsend, self-made success story, pillar of the community. The man Lucas saw was nothing like that image. Ryan was cruel to his employees, berating salespeople who didn't meet quota, dismissing service workers like they were invisible. He drove a different luxury car every week, always the most expensive model on his lot, making sure everyone saw him arriving in style. His phone conversations, and Lucas listened to several by parking nearby and using equipment he definitely shouldn't have kept from his army days, revealed a man obsessed with maintaining appearances while everything beneath the surface rotted. Ryan was also worried. Lucas heard it in the calls to his lawyer, the stressed conversations about the custody case, the CPS investigation, the potential criminal charges. But more than legal trouble, Ryan was worried about publicity. If people knew what he'd done to Emma, his carefully cultivated image would shatter. Lucas decided to help that along. He started small. An anonymous tip to a local news blogger about irregularities in Ryan Townsend's charitable foundation. Specifically, Questions about how much of the donated money actually reached the intended recipients versus how much went to administrative costs and event expenses. The blogger, always hungry for content, started digging. Then Lucas contacted former employees of Ryan's dealerships. He'd found a pattern in employment records: high turnover, especially among younger salespeople and women. Many had left after short tenures, and when Lucas reached out privately, they told stories of a toxic workplace where Ryan played favorites, encouraged cutthroat competition, and retaliated against anyone who questioned his methods. One former salesman, Curtis Bean, had been fired after refusing to lie to a customer about a car's accident history. Curtis had documentation, emails from Ryan explicitly instructing him to conceal damage reports, to sell cars he knew had problems. It was fraud, minor compared to child abuse, but it was another crack in the foundation. Lucas compiled everything into a dossier: financial irregularities, employment violations, consumer fraud, character testimony from people who'd seen Ryan's cruelty firsthand. He sent copies to the news blogger, the Better Business Bureau, the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, and several local newspapers. Then he waited. The Marshall Moreno story broke first. Darla Edwards held a press conference with Hannah Nash, Christy Weaver, and Jennifer Wiley standing beside her. They read prepared statements describing years of sexual harassment and workplace retaliation at Moreno's gyms. By the end of the day, 2 more women had come forward. By the end of the week, it was 7. Moreno's gyms went into crisis mode. Corporate headquarters issued a statement placing Moreno on indefinite administrative leave pending investigation. Within 48 hours, he'd resigned. Within a week, 3 of his gym locations had closed, the franchises unable to weather the publicity storm. His social media accounts, previously full of motivational quotes and shirtless selfies, went dark. Marion called Lucas 15 times that day. He didn't answer. She left voicemails, each more desperate than the last. Marshall was ruined, she said. His business was collapsing. The media was calling him a predator. She needed Lucas to understand that she'd made a mistake, that Marshall had fooled her too, that she wanted to work things out for Emma's sake. Lucas listened to one message all the way through, then blocked her number. The Ryan Townsend story took longer to build, but hit harder when it landed. The news blogger's investigation into the charitable foundation revealed that of the $400,000 raised last year, only $120,000 had gone to actual charitable causes. The rest had disappeared into operating expenses that included lavish parties, expensive meals, and donations to politicians who granted favorable zoning variances for Ryan's dealerships. The employment complaints painted a picture of a tyrant who abused his workers. The consumer fraud allegations showed a pattern of deception. And through it all, the custody case loomed. Ryan Townsend, prominent businessman and philanthropist, accused of locking his 6-year-old granddaughter in a dog cage. The local news picked up the story, then regional outlets. Then, because the video had leaked somehow, Lucas had made sure of that, national media. The image of Emma sobbing in that cage, Ryan standing over her with a padlock, went viral. Ryan's lawyer issued statements, threatened lawsuits, called it a smear campaign orchestrated by Lucas Bowers, a disgruntled ex-son-in-law. But the damage was done. People canceled orders at Ryan's dealerships. The politicians he'd donated to returned his money and denounced him publicly. The charitable foundation dissolved. Banks started calling in loans. Within 3 weeks, Ryan Townsend's empire began collapsing. Lucas watched it happen from his apartment, Emma playing with dolls on the floor beside him. Dr. Lacey said Emma was making remarkable progress in therapy. The nightmares were less frequent. She'd started smiling more, laughing at cartoons, being a child again. Daddy. Emma looked up from her dolls. Why is Mommy sad? Marion's supervised visitations had been difficult. She cried every time, apologizing to Emma, trying to explain that she'd made terrible mistakes. Emma mostly stayed quiet during these visits, polite but distant. Your mom is learning that actions have consequences, Lucas said carefully. When we hurt people, especially people we love, there are always consequences. Emma thought about this, then returned to her dolls. She was acting out a scene where the princess escaped from a tower and defeated the dragon. Lucas watched her, recognizing the symbolism even if Emma didn't consciously understand it yet. His phone rang. Gregory, you see the news? His friend asked. Hard to miss it. Ryan just filed for bankruptcy. All 3 dealerships. He's going to lose everything. Gregory paused. The DA is also moving forward with criminal charges. Child endangerment, unlawful restraint. Marion too. They're looking at serious time if convicted. Good. Luke, I have to ask, and you don't have to answer, but all of this happening at once, Ryan's business collapsing, Marino's scandal, the media coverage. That's not just coincidence, is it? Lucas watched Emma playing, safe and happy in his small apartment. Sometimes bad people just get unlucky. Right? Unlucky. Gregory's tone made it clear he understood perfectly. Well, for what it's worth, they deserved it. Emma's doing okay. She's getting there. We both are. After the call ended, Lucas pulled up the news on his laptop. The latest article detailed Ryan's fall from grace. Bankrupt, unemployed, facing criminal charges, his name now synonymous with child abuse. Marshall Moreno had moved to another state, trying to rebuild, but his reputation followed him. Everywhere he went, news articles popped up. Former victims. Failed businesses. The image of a man who'd thought himself untouchable learning he was anything but. Marion had moved back in with her mother, Ryan's wife Geraldine. Geraldine had filed for divorce, taking what little remained of Ryan's assets. Marion was working as a receptionist at a dental office, her social circle having evaporated once the scandal broke. She faced trial in 4 months. Everything Lucas had planned had worked. He'd used their own weapons against them, Ryan's pride and public image, Marino's predatory behavior, Marion's weakness for whoever held power. He'd been patient, methodical, and ruthless. And he'd done it all while maintaining plausible deniability, never directly breaking any laws, just exposing truths that others had worked to hide. 6 months after the custody hearing, Lucas stood in another courtroom. This time, it was criminal court, and Marion sat at the defendant's table with her court-appointed attorney. Ryan was beside her, looking 20 years older than the last time Lucas had seen him. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by an off-the-rack blazer that didn't fit right. His face was hollow, his hands shaking. The trial had been short. The video evidence was damning. Emma's testimony, delivered via closed-circuit television to spare her the trauma of facing her abusers, was heartbreaking and clear, and the physical evidence of abuse was indisputable. Ryan's lawyer had tried to argue diminished capacity, that Ryan had been under stress and made poor choices. Marion's lawyer claimed she'd been manipulated by her father and Moreno. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Judge House returned to deliver sentencing. He looked at Marion first. Miss Townsend, you are Emma's mother. You carried her for 9 months, gave birth to her, and had a responsibility to protect her. Instead, you participated in systematic torture of your own child. You locked her in a cage. You tried to erase her father from her life. You stood by while she suffered. Marion was crying, her lawyer's hand on her shoulder. Taking into account your cooperation with authorities and completion of psychiatric treatment, this court sentences you to 5 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 3 years. You will also complete 500 hours of community service upon release and surrender all parental rights to Emma Bowers. Marion crumpled, sobbing into her hands. Geraldine, sitting in the gallery, turned away. Judge House turned to Ryan. Mr. Townsend, you are a grandfather. A position of trust and love. You used that position to inflict cruelty on a 6-year-old child. You attempted to break her spirit, to mold her into something that suited your purposes. You failed. That child showed more strength and courage than you have demonstrated in your entire life. Ryan stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. This court sentences you to 8 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 6 years. You will also pay restitution to Lucas Bowers for psychological counseling costs for Emma, and you are permanently prohibited from contact with the minor child. The bailiff led them away. Marion looked back at Lucas one last time, her face a mask of grief and regret. Ryan didn't look back at all. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around Lucas. He'd prepared a brief statement. Justice has been served. My daughter is safe, healing, and looking forward to a bright future. That's all that matters. He didn't take questions, just walked to his truck where Casey Gould waited with Emma. The babysitter had become part of their lives, helping with childcare when Lucas worked and becoming something like a big sister to Emma. All done? Casey asked. All done. Emma looked up at him. Are they gone, Daddy? Yes, sweetheart. They're gone. Good. Can we get ice cream? Lucas laughed, feeling something tight in his chest finally loosen. We can get all the ice cream you want. A year later, Lucas and Emma moved into a new house. Nothing extravagant, 3 bedrooms in a good school district, a backyard with a swing set, neighbors who waved hello. Lucas had started his own business, installing security systems and communication networks for small businesses. The work was steady, and he could set his own hours to be there for Emma. Emma was thriving. Dr. Lacey had recently told Lucas that Emma was one of the most resilient children she'd ever worked with. The nightmares were gone. Emma had friends at school, was doing well in her classes, and had recently joined a soccer team. She talked about the cage sometimes, but in the past tense, something that had happened to her, but didn't define her. On Saturday mornings, they had breakfast at the diner where Lucas had received Casey's call. The same booth, the same pancakes, but everything was different now. Emma would chatter about school, her friends, the book she was reading. Lucas would listen and watch his daughter be a kid, something so simple that Marion and Ryan had tried to take away. Gregory came by for dinner once a month, bringing his wife and 2 kids. Emma adored them, loved having playmates, and the adults would sit on the back porch while the kids played, talking about everything and nothing. You ever regret it? Gregory asked one evening, watching the sunset. What you did to Ryan and Moreno. How you took them apart. Lucas thought about it. Ryan was in prison, his empire gone, his name ruined. Marshall Moreno was broke and unemployable, living in a studio apartment and working part-time at a gym he used to own. Marion was also in prison, serving her sentence, writing letters to Emma that Lucas kept in a box unopened because Emma had said she didn't want to read them yet. No, Lucas said. They tried to destroy my daughter. They deserved worse than what they got. You're probably right. Gregory took a sip of his beer. For what it's worth, I'm glad you called me that night. Glad I could help. You saved Emma's life. I'll never forget that. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the kids playing. Emma's laughter rang out, clear and bright, and Lucas thought about how close he'd come to losing this, to losing her. The revenge had been sweet, watching his enemies fall, but this was better. This was Emma running through the yard, safe and happy. This was tucking her into bed at night, without worrying someone would hurt her. This was being the father she deserved. Ryan and Marion had tried to break his daughter. Instead, they'd broken themselves. And Lucas had made sure of it. 2 years after the trial, Emma asked about her mother. They were doing homework together at the kitchen table, and out of nowhere, she said, "Do you think Mom is sorry?" Lucas carefully set down the math worksheet they'd been reviewing. "I think she is, yes. Dr. Lacey says I can write to her if I want. That it might help me." Emma fidgeted with her pencil. "But I don't know what to say. You don't have to write if you're not ready." "I know. But maybe." Emma looked up at him with Marion's blue eyes. "Maybe I want to understand why. Why she did it. Why she let Grandpa hurt me." Lucas had dreaded this conversation, but he'd also prepared for it with Dr. Lacey's guidance. Sometimes people make terrible choices because they're scared or weak or confused. Your mom let other people control her decisions instead of listening to her own heart. She chose wrong, and she's paying for that now. Did you make her pay for it? Emma asked. The question was direct, perceptive beyond her 8 years. What makes you ask that? Casey told me that Grandpa's business fell apart right after the trial. That Mr. Moreno lost everything. She said it was karma, but I looked up karma, and it's about the universe making things right. This felt different, like someone made it happen. Lucas looked at his daughter, his smart, observant, incredible daughter, and decided she deserved honesty. Your mom and Grandpa and Mr. Moreno hurt you. The law punished them, but I wanted to make sure they couldn't hurt anyone else again. So yes, I helped make sure their bad choices had consequences. Emma thought about this, turning her pencil over in her small hands. Did it make you feel better? It made me feel like I'd protected you. That's what mattered. Okay. Emma returned to her homework. I think I'll write to Mom, but not to forgive her, just to tell her I'm okay without her. That sounds like a good choice, sweetheart. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Lucas stood in her doorway watching her breathe. The little girl who'd been locked in a cage was now thriving, finding her own strength, making her own choices. She would always carry scars from what Marion and Ryan had done, but those scars hadn't broken her. If anything, they'd made her stronger. Lucas thought about the man he'd been 2 years ago, the estranged husband living in a cheap apartment, driving highways for work, unaware that his daughter was being tortured. He thought about the rage that had consumed him when he saw that video, the cold calculation with which he'd dismantled his enemies' lives. He didn't regret a single thing. Some people believed in turning the other cheek, in forgiveness, in letting the system handle justice. Lucas believed in protecting his daughter by any means necessary. The system had helped. Judge House, Gregory, Roberta Donnelly, all the people who'd done their jobs well. But the system alone wouldn't have been enough. Ryan had too much money, too many connections. Without Lucas's intervention, Ryan might have gotten probation, Marion might have regained partial custody, and Emma would still be trapped in that nightmare. Instead, they were here. Safe. Free. Happy. The ending wasn't tied up in a neat bow. Marion would get out of prison eventually. Ryan too. Emma would continue therapy, would continue processing trauma that should never have happened. There would be hard days ahead, difficult conversations, moments when the past resurface. But Emma would face those challenges as a strong, loved child with a father who would never let anyone hurt her again. And if someone tried, Lucas would make sure they learned the same lesson Ryan Townsend and Marshall Moreno had learned. Some fathers don't just protect their children. They make examples of anyone foolish enough to threaten them. Emma stirred in her sleep, a small smile crossing her face. Lucas quietly closed her door and walked to his office. There, in the bottom drawer of his desk, he kept a folder. Inside were all the letters Marion had written to Emma, unopened, preserved, waiting for the day when Emma decided she was ready to read them. There was also a newspaper clipping about Ryan's bankruptcy, a printed article about Marshall Moreno's fall from grace, and a copy of the original video Casey had sent. Lucas looked at these pieces of the past, reminders of the war he'd fought and won. Then he closed the folder and locked the drawer. The war was over. His daughter was safe. And that was the only ending that mattered. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.